we're off to a good start here about the child, and our summit conference is tomorrow. And one of the people that you will be privileged to see if you are at that conference, either in person or online, is Don Casey. And I want to invite Don to just come into our little room here and have a seat right over here, John. And Don, that's about the third time I've said that, isn't it, Don?
That's okay.
People call me strange things too, on purpose. Don, I have in conversations with people, especially pro-life conversations, they'll say things like, well, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, one of those is life. And I'm quick to correct them and say, well, that's not a law. And you say?
Oh, it is a law. Absolutely.
How so?
Well, the first law of the American people recognizes the Creator and says that the Creator, has given each and every individual the right to life, liberty, and property. Because without life, which is the first aspect of property, there can be no other property. So it is essential that if we are going to protect our private property rights as adults, it is incumbent on us to protect the first aspect of property among the most innocent members of our society. And unfortunately, we don't recognize that. Your private property rights are not protected because there's a law written in Washington, D.C. or any of the state capitals. It's only because we understand and know what God has granted us in unalienable rights, and we're willing to protect those rights for our neighbor. It's just common sense in my way of thinking.
So the basis of law is not just the United States Code. You've evidently researched this a little bit. So tell us the nature and sources of law.
The nature for us, the American people, the Bible is the basics of the principles upon which our American jurisprudence system is created. And if you look at the 1783 Treaty of Peace that was signed in Paris, you will find that the very first line of that treaty begins that both parties, the American representatives and the King of England, have come together under the auspices of the most high Trinity, and that the King of England is described in the very next sentence as being the defender of the faith. Well, he's not the defender of the Muslim faith or any other faith. He was termed and labeled the defender of the Christian faith. And in John Jay's decision on Chisholm versus the state of Georgia, he said that all of the responsibilities and authority attributed to the earthly king in England devolved on each and every one of us. So it behooves those that espouse to be called by his name to become the defender of the faith and know and understand what he has granted to us. But it's very unfortunate that we have no sermons from any pulpit that I've ever heard of. And I just talked with 12 pastors a week ago this past Monday, and I asked them if they had ever heard or ever preached a sermon that was biblically based and related to the Declaration of Rights in either the state constitution or the federal constitution, because it's not the Constitution that grants you rights, it's the Creator. And if he has granted those rights to us, why aren't we hearing sermons that associate biblical principles with those rights in each Bill of Rights for each and every state?
Well, Don, it sounds like you've done some research on this. You're not just saying this spontaneously. Where did your journey begin on this nature of organic law? And tell us what you've discovered.
Well, it began with Agenda 21 in 1992. Of course, that was the same year Perot and Clinton and Bush were all running for office. Right. But at the same time, there was something called an environmental agreement sponsored by the United Nations. Now, when I say environment, it's much like property rights. Most people think of property rights as associated with ownership of land. That's not true. The first, as we began to talk about it, the first aspect of property is life itself. So when you talk about the environment, you have to begin to think that the environment encompasses everything that you do in relationship to, as these people would say, Mother Earth, because they really and truly believe that Mother Earth is the one that has granted us existence on this planet.
Yeah.
So at any rate, Agenda 21 is the agenda for the 21st century. It is the Bible essentially for something called sustainable development. Very few people know what sustainable development is, but it is an ideology that is anathema to the Christian principles. And it is adopted and accepted throughout this country. It is written into practically every comprehensive plan at every local municipality and county government across this country, plus the globe. As a matter of fact, Alabama is the only state, only government in the world that has ever adopted an anti-Agenda 21 law. And after passage of that, myself and another fellow were asked to come to Australia and explain how and why we were able to seek passage of this particular law. Well, from that, I began to understand private property rights, where they stem from. And then that just led from one thing to the next in trying to understand why and how in my 70 years of existence on this earth, we had gone so far morally. I mean, you look at the divorce rate of those professing Christian principles is the same as those that don't. So it's quite obvious that our moral decay is effective in the church as well as outside the church. And it's just a question of beginning to try to understand how and why we got where we are. And that's essentially led me to the point to begin to understand and look at the law and how the law is still there. It's still on the books. We can use it, but if we don't know, and typically most people can't explain the very first right that they have, and if you don't know what rights you have, you don't know that you have a birthright as an American citizen. You can't explain what an American is. For instance, Esau valued his birthright. He got to eat a bowl of soup. Mm-hmm. We don't even know there's a table to put a bowl on. We're just giving up our birthright without even a thought of it. So it's just appalling to me. That this should be preached from the pulpit. Pulpit's AWOL in my viewpoint, to me, this is the education of the remnant, and I'm doing what I can, speaking to whoever will listen, trying to explain what I know about unalienable rights. And when I say unalienable rights, I hyphenated that, and that's the word that's used in the Declaration of Independence, which is the first law, the first organic law of the American jurisprudence system. And it simply says that if the Creator has granted you unalienable rights, no entity created by man nor man has the authority to place a lien against that which the Creator has granted to you. If you look at your state constitution, you will find it uses the word inalienable. And there is a difference. Most people think it is interchangeable. It's not. The unalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence are rights that the possessor cannot give up. You and I can't lawfully.
We can't. We couldn't. It's like an IRA. You can't collateralize it. Even if you wanted to, under your own volition, you couldn't get rid of them.
That's absolutely right. But inalienable rights are rights, for instance, that you enter into a contract and you want to give up some of the rights to your private property.
For an in consideration of.
That's right. So that's entirely up to you as to whether or not you want to do that. Right. But it's just unfortunate that our system doesn't teach this, and we have no concepts of we think we have constitutional rights when in fact we do not.
Right. Don, wrapping up now, you're going to be one of the speakers at the summit tomorrow. Have you told us everything that you're going to say, and there's no reason to go to the conference to hear what you've got to say?
Oh, I know in 30 minutes I can go into greater detail and give more explanation about what is unfortunately going on with the judicial system and how we're relinquishing our rights.
Well, Don, listen, I really would love to hear more, and hopefully this is not our last dialogue because there's a lot to talk about. You've touched on some subjects that really do need to be developed, and we look forward to your presentation tomorrow at the conference.
Thank you very much.